Welcome to Searching the Scriptures. Our Bible teacher will be Gunther von Harringa Sr. In this series of studies, we will be focusing on the book of Judges. In Acts 17:11 we read, "These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the Scriptures daily, whether those things were so." So without further ado, let's look into God's Word, the Bible.
Good evening and welcome to Searching the Scriptures. This is going to be Judges 5, part 22, and today's date is October 20th, 2017. I'll go ahead and read verses 12 through 18. Awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, and lead thy captivity captive, thou son of Abinoam. Then he made him that remaineth have dominion over the nobles among the people. Jehovah made me have dominion over the mighty. Out of Ephraim was there a root of them against Amalek. After thee, Benjamin, among thy people. Out of Machir came down governors, and out of Zebulun they that handle the pen of the writer. And the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar and also Barak. He was sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben there were great thoughts of heart. Why abodest thou among the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flocks? For the divisions of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. Gilead abode beyond Jordan. And why did Dan remain in ships? Asher continued on the seashore, and abode in his breaches. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeoparded their lives unto the death in the high places of the field. In our previous study, we left off at the last part of verse 14 with regards to the tribe of Zebulun in the phrase, "they that handle the pen of the writer." And you will recall that Zebulun, along with Naphtali, were the two tribes that Judge Deborah had told Barak would help him to fight against Sisera and his army. Let's begin by looking at the term "they that handle" as we attempt to discover the spiritual meaning of this curious phrase and why God chose to single out Zebulun with respect to this declaration, "they that handle the pen of the writer." "They that handle" is Strong's number 4900. And it's utilized in some significant citations as these succeeding verses are going to demonstrate. We did encounter this word once before in Judges 4, and we saw it there actually in verse 6, I believe. "And I will draw," and this is how it's rendered, "and I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand." Also, if we go to verse 28 of Genesis 37, 23 to 28, this same term is translated as "and they drew." And again, this has to do with how Joseph's half-brothers treated him. "And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew, that's our word, and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. Also, in Exodus 12, 21 to 28, we find a description of the institution of the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, both of which point to the atonement of Christ, which took place in actuality prior to the foundation of the world. And in verse 21, this word is rendered as draw out. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For Jehovah will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, Jehovah will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto your houses to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye be come to the land which Jehovah will give you, according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, What mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, It is the sacrifice of Jehovah's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went away and did as Jehovah had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. So once again, we see here where the blood, on the one hand, protected the Israelites because it pointed to the blood or the life of Christ, that each child of God is covered with. And at the same time, we see the opposite. Those that did not have the blood on the doorpost were destroyed, or at least the eldest either person or animal was destroyed, including the firstborn of Pharaoh as well. And if you recall, this was the last plague, the 10th plague, before you could say it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And Pharaoh then, at that point, let them go. Prior to Moses receiving the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, the previous chapter, chapter 19, describes the events leading up to that fearfully awesome descent where God appeared on top of Mount Sinai. And in verse 13 of Exodus 19, 10 to 13 and 16 to 19, this word is expressed as soundeth long. In this account, of which, if we go to the New Testament in Hebrews 12, 18 to 21 and 25 to 29, provide a very important commentary which relates to our present day of judgment. And Jehovah said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day Jehovah will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not an hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long. That's our word, soundeth long. Strong's number 4900, that shall come up to the mount. Then verses 16 to 19, we read, And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Jehovah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. Similarly, Joshua 6, 1 through 5, describes the assault on the city of palm trees, or it's also known as Jericho. Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And Jehovah said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. Now, in verses 4 and 5, I should comment here, Mr. Camping went into quite a bit of detail regarding the incorrect usage of 3 words. Only 2 of them are in this particular, well, no, I guess all 3 are in this particular passage. And this information can be found on pages, let's see, 238 to 242 of his book, Time Has an End. And this has to do with the fact that the trumpets is incorrectly translated as trumpets. It should be ram's horns, because it's the Hebrew word shofar, which is Strong's number 7782, and it should always be translated as ram's horns. Secondly, the other word here is the word. Let's see. It's a little bit confusing. but there's another a word here that should be translated as Jubilee. It's Yobel. Strong's number 3104. And they translated that with a different word. I don't have it right in front of me. But the reason it has to be Jubilee is because of the fact that it has to do with the proclamation of liberty from sin and Satan, and that's really the essence of the Jubilee. And that it's the actually the word ram's horn is shofar 7782, and Yobel again should be translated as Jubilee. Verse 5, and it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. In verse 5, we have this word, a long blast, which is our word, 4900. And again, instead of ram's horn, like we saw in verse 4, it should be translated as Yobel, which again is Jubilee. In other words, it should be translated horn of Jubilee. And then continuing in verse 5, let me read that again. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast, or when they blow the horn of the Jubilee, and when ye hear the sound of the ram's horn, not trumpet, but ram's horn, which is shofar 7782, all the people shall shout with a great shout. This word shout is teruah, is 8643. And the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. Well, let's look at a couple other words where we find 4900 included. One is Jeremiah 31:3, in which God declares his great love for each of his elect. The Lord hath, or Jehovah hath appeared of old unto me, saying, Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love. Therefore with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Have I drawn thee is this word 4900. And also we can go to verse 4 of Hosea 11:1 through 8. And here we read, When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and called my son out of Egypt. As they called them, so they went from them. They sacrificed unto Baalim, and burned incense to graven images. I taught Ephraim also to go, taking them by their arms. But they knew not that I healed them. I drew them, that's our word, with cords of a man, with bands of love. And I was to them as they that take off the yoke on their jaws. And I laid meat unto them. Then in verses 5 through 8, he shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king. You might recall that Ephraim is another name for the 10 northern tribes. He shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because they refused to return. And the sword shall abide on his cities, and shall consume his branches and devour them because of their own counsels. And my people are bent to backsliding from me. Though they call them to the Most High, none at all would exalt him. How shall I give thee up, Ephraim? How shall I deliver thee, Israel? How shall I make thee as Admah? How shall I set thee as Zeboim? Mine heart is turned with me, my repentings are kindled together. If you remember, Admah and Zeboim were the two other cities, along with Sodom and Gomorrah, and one other that I can't think of right now, in which God poured out his judgment upon. Now, the next term that we want to investigate is the word, the pen. In the phrase, they that handle the pen of the writer. And it's only rendered as the pen in this verse, as far as I could tell. In every other instance, it's translated as either tribe, rod, or scepter, as these next citations reveal. And I've mentioned this before, but Genesis 49 has to do with Jacob's blessings on each of his children as the heads of their 12 tribes. And this word surfaces in verse 10 and 28 as the scepter and tribes, respectively. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Then in verse 28, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is it that their fathers spake unto them and blessed them. Every one according to his blessing he blessed them. And of course, when we speak about the scepter, here it's typifying the Lord Jesus Christ, who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is also the lawgiver, which is one of the ways that the term governor, when we were looking at that term governor, it's also lawgiver. And this is also the case in Numbers 24:17, where this word and a scepter also shows up. And again, this is part of Balaam's parable, and spiritually it's picturing Christ as the scepter, and the scepter was that rod, that staff that the kings held to indicate their authority. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. Also in Deuteronomy 5:23, we read there, and it came to pass, when ye heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, for the mountain did burn with fire, that ye came near unto me, even all the heads of your tribes and your elders. Again, hearkening back to what happened when God appeared with the lightning and thunder and fire on top of Mount Sinai. Now, the next passage is Deuteronomy 29:14-23. And in verses 18 and 21, we find again this word tribe mentioned. And this passage reminds us of Hebrews 12:15 through 17, which speaks about Esau, being a fornicator and likening him to a root of bitterness. Here we have this same word root that we've seen earlier in this chapter as well. Neither with you only do I make this covenant. And this again is Deuteronomy 29:14-23. Neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath, but with him that standeth here with us this day before Jehovah our God, and also with him that is not here with us this day. For ye know how we have dwelt in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the nations which ye passed by. And ye have seen their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. Lest there should be among you man or woman or family or tribe, whose heart turneth away this day from Jehovah our God, to go and serve the gods of these nations. Lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. You might recall, too, that this idea of turning people away and having them serve other gods is one of the characteristics of a false prophet, even if what he says does come to pass. Verse 19, and it came to pass when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. Jehovah will not spare him, but then the anger of Jehovah and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and Jehovah shall blot out his name from under heaven. And Jehovah shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the law, so that the generation to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses which Jehovah hath laid upon it, and that the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning, that it is not sown, nor beareth, nor any grass groweth therein, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which Jehovah overthrew in his anger and in his wrath. Well, I think we'll have to stop here today, and Lord willing, pick this up in our next study.
Thank you for joining us today for Searching the Scriptures. Until next time, to God be the glory.